This message brought to you by Chicanos por la Causa.
Bienvenidos and welcome back to another segment of La Plática. This is Dr. Jose Leyba bringing you stories from our community, from our leaders through their lens. And they are telling their stories so that no one else will tell it. And so that's what we specialize here, highlighting our Chicano culture, our language, and all of our challenges, obviously the stresses, struggle that we've had, but also the success. So this is Latino USA TV and LA Barrios Stories. In order to find these stories, download the app, Latino USA TV, and you'll find great leaders like my guest today, Dr. Julianna Barnes, the Chancellor of the South Orange
County Community College District.
Community College. Well, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
You're not the typical chancellor. What do people say when they're looking for the chancellor and you say, wait, that's me?
Well, what's interesting is just earlier today, the producer actually said, hey, I haven't met you yet. I go, I'm Julianna. And he says, oh, that's great. But do you know where the chancellor is? And I said, that would be me. And so obviously sitting in as a chancellor, I kind of changing paradigms, having long hair and wearing hoop earrings, right? And so it's actually significant, right? It's the visual appearance is part of the story and part of the journey.
So let's talk about that story, where you grew up, and then what your motivation for an education was, and let's talk about your fabulous community college district, and then we'll kind of close up. So.
So I was actually born and raised in San Diego, California, primarily near the border in Chula Vista, family in National City as well, and I was stayed there up until 2 years ago, and I moved to Orange County when I got the position as chancellor, and so. So that's where I was born and raised. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that you're my primo.
Sure. So for our viewers, you have to understand we are primos, and we're actually the only two in our extended family of maybe 100 and something members that have their doctorates and have been college presidents. And obviously you've surpassed me, and I'm so honored and proud of you because you've become a chancellor. There's only two Latina chancellors in the whole community college system of California, 115 community colleges, right?
Exactly. And there's only two. I was the only one up until earlier this year.
So tell us about what was your motivation to get an education?
Yeah. Well, again, as you mentioned, we have hundreds of family members, right? First cousins, second cousins, aunts, uncles, and all of that. And growing up, not being in a family that had education, but honestly, there was a lot of poverty, right? There was a lot of struggle. And I always just remember kind of the struggle when I was younger and thinking that my way out of that was through education. And so that was basically it. I was known in my family as the schoolgirl. They're like, oh, there's Julie, the schoolgirl, and it's because I was always studying. I'm like, I'm going to make it, and I'll tell you, it was hard. And going through the educational system, the educational system wasn't necessarily designed for us. It wasn't necessarily designed for Latinos. And so I think that's one of the joys too of getting into administration is that we can break through. Again, just even talking about my appearance and people going, oh, you're the chancellor? I'm like, I am the chancellor. But the significance is that I have the ability to impact a change in the way the higher education system works to make sure that it's working for all of our students, which a majority of now are Latinos, right?
Exactly.
So, especially in the community colleges.
Well, that's a great message because, we here at Latino USA TV and LA Barrios Stories are trying to change those stereotypes that folks have about us, okay? Yesterday, for example, we interviewed a very successful principal who's now a district administrator at LAUSD, and he's a lowrider. I mean, he's part of the Lowrider Alliance. Been part of a lowrider club for something like 65 years, the Imperial. So now, let's talk now about you were a president for 8 years. You're eminently qualified to be a chancellor. What does a chancellor do?
Well, that's a great question. So my simple response is usually I make dreams come true. When people go, what does a chancellor do anyway? Because it is kind of a hard position to really understand. And at the end of the day, there's thousands of students. So my district serves 50,000 students.
Wow.
My two colleges, Saddleback College and Irvine Valley College. The system, the California Community College system, serves over 2 million students. And again, there's a large population of Latinos. It's a very diverse community, right, of students that we serve. So as the chancellor, I get to impact policy and legislation to impact the broader good, right? And so I had the opportunity to serve on some statewide boards, for example. So I was in Sacramento advocating for particular laws that would benefit all of our students. And basically I worked to kind of change the paradigm and flip the switch to be sure that all of our students are succeeding. Because before, as we know, there's equity gaps. Not all of our students are succeeding, and they're falling through the cracks, and it's not the fault of our students, right? It's really the institutional responsibility to do something different to make sure that our students' social and cultural backgrounds are validated, that they see themselves in the classroom, reflected in the classroom, in the curriculum, and that they feel that sense of belonging, and then therefore, you know, they persist and they complete. So I basically am able to impact policy and also legislation to positively impact all of our students. But I like to say I also impact kind of culture and climate to be sure that there is that sense of belonging for everybody.
And that's really important. I think there's been a number of studies done that students of color, Latinos, African Americans, and certain Asian groups and refugees especially, they don't, unless they have that sense of belonging and they feel comfortable and welcome, they don't finish, especially community college students. So now you will be offering at your campuses, your colleges, baccalaureates in the future. Can you say something about that for us?
Yeah, so I was also involved with this. So the community colleges passed legislation to authorize us to offer baccalaureate degrees. So I know both of my colleges are in the exploratory phase and then eventually in the application phase to establish a bachelor's degree. Most recently, we tried to expand the legislation to allow us to offer nursing degrees. As we know, during the pandemic, we found out there's a big shortage of nurses, and we're poised to offer nursing degrees. Unfortunately, those bills were vetoed, so we're going to go back to the table to try to expand, you know, the bachelor's degrees in nursing. But yeah, so now there's, I think, 30 colleges in the state that are offering baccalaureate degrees, and hopefully in the next couple of years we're going to join them.
Now, I know that a lot of parents don't know much about the cost of education, and they think that it's out of sight, out of mind, but that's not true, right? Tell us what it costs to go to your colleges.
It's dirt cheap. I'm even losing track because many of our students now could go for free, to tell you the truth. And so I think it's like $48 per unit. And so, but we have this program, it's called the Promise Program. So students who get involved with the Promise Program, they take a particular number of units. They're able to have their fees, their tuition waived. We also do this thing called, you know, books cost a lot, right? You get like a history book, it could be $100, and students are like, I can't buy the book. I remember not being able to buy the book, right? I have to go to the library. But anyway, so we have this thing called zero textbook costs, or online educational resources where students could go to class. One of my colleges is like the leader in this movement. So students could actually go, have all of their tuition and fees waived, and then not have to buy any books. And so it's almost like free, right?
So there's no excuse for someone not going to a community college, really.
Exactly. We open the door, and we're being really intentional about making sure that you can get in and that you could actually then complete and get your degrees and certificates.
Now, your colleges are well known for having high transfer rates to the university system, but you also have a number of outstanding workforce development programs, right?
Yeah. So I mentioned one of them, nursing. Saddleback College has a large concentration of what we call the career technical education programs. And so, but Irvine Valley College is also coming on board, because at the end of the day, students want to earn a living wage. They want to get skills. And so while we do transfer, we also do provide those short-term certificates as well, where students could get some skills in a particular field and then go out into the work world.
Wow. Now, when you interact with students, what do you tell them? Because a lot of students probably don't know who you are because you're at the district office, but you do visit the colleges occasionally.
Definitely,
so how do students react to you when you say, I'm the chancellor?
Well, just like your producer, like, wow, But, I think at the end of the day, I like to joke around and say, at the end of the day, I'm just Julie from the block, because I truly am Julie from the block. And so it doesn't always come out when I'm leading, but deep inside, that's who I am. And so usually when I'm meeting with students, I relate. A lot of our students are first generation. You know, their parents didn't go to college. And then I talk about my, you know, my own experience. My mom went to 10th grade, right? And so she didn't know. And so I think once they learn kind of about, you know, my background and my history and what I'm trying to achieve with making sure that all of our students succeed, it kind of like makes them think, okay, she's like just Julie from the block. She's just like a real person, right? And so I think there's that. But there's the other thing that I've really acknowledged over the years is that I'm not the chancellor in and of myself. I represent the community.
Okay.
And so I know even the other day, one of our ASB presidents, she's really beautiful, Clarice Encarnacion, so she's Latina. I met with her last week. We had coffee, and she was like, wow, you know, normally, you know, we don't see people like you in these leadership roles. So I represent, you know, I am representing her and all of the other students that don't always see people like us in these leadership positions.
And that's very inspiring to see people like us in those leadership positions. I know when I was at Mesa Community College as a vice president, you know, all the Latinos would come up because they don't see us, you know. And so what you're doing now as a chancellor and changing the stereotypes and leading positively, because you're eminently qualified to be in that position. So as we close up today, what would you like to tell students and viewers about education and the community college system?
Well, you know, they say education is the great equalizer, and it truly is. I mean, at the end of the day, for students who don't think that they're college material, you are college material. You belong there. We're ready for you, and you know, it's like you said earlier. There's really no excuse, right? It's low cost or free to enter, and we're there basically to support you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for being here with us today, and hopefully we'll see you again, and maybe we can do a show at one of your colleges to highlight the wonderful things that students need to know about. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Julianna Barnes.
Thank you
as
so
a
much.
primo, I'm so proud and honored that you're here with us, and so I don't know what else to tell you about my prima, because for me, she's wonderful. One of the, as I mentioned before, 2 Latina chancellors in the state of California. So hopefully someday some of our viewers will aspire to be a Julianna Barnes. This is Dr. Jose Leyba with Los Angeles Barrios Stories and Latino USA TV signing off today, because today we brought you a story of success. Success is in our blood, and success is what will make us continue to provide the workforce for this country and the driving force for making our society better. So muchas gracias, adiós y hasta la próxima vez.
Gracias.